Started. Going live.
Individual sports are just individual sports,
That was in my high school. I didn't have to take any gym classes except I needed like 1 half credit before I could graduate. So I had to take at least one like half credit worth of gym beyond what I got out of just being in marching
That's
band.
interesting. They made everyone in high school, no matter what, had to have gym. But you basically always had gym.
For my entire schooling after elementary school, marching band always counted as gym credits in addition to class credits.
No.
But I had to get a half credit, and there were two options that weren't like a sport that would take too much effort. There was team sports, which was a class where people just played like pickleball, or just sat there and did nothing. And there was a class called individual sports, which it turned out meant go do whatever sport you care about, and that's it. And everyone gets an A no matter what because the teacher didn't give a shit. So I just left every day.
We had gym class, elementary, middle school, high school, basically. All time, no matter what you scheduled your classes to be, what you registered for, and right?
Have we ever done a show on gym class? Not tonight. I think we got a topic, but
you always had gym class on your schedule at all times.
Yeah, for us, anyone who wasn't in the marching band or on a sports team had that, and anyone who was in the marching band or on a sports team did not have to do it.
Marching band people and sports team people, they were all in gym class. Yep. Everyone had gym class.
So other than the individual sports class that I skipped for the entirety of my junior year of high school, I didn't take a single gym class since 4th grade. And it was great. All right.
Gym class had its positives and its negatives.
Yeah. I think it was mostly that I saw the low effort that was put into the gym classes in my schools.
Yeah, sometimes, whatever.
All right.
I'd rather play dodgeball than go to class.
If I could just play dodgeball instead of working, like right now.
That's what I did. But
even if it was shitty dodgeball, fine.
We would play dodgeball a lot. We played floor hockey, volleyball, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we did that in elementary school, but then after that...
The part I didn't like was, run a mile. It's like, I don't want it. I've done it you make me do this I ran a mile every day. I didn't get any faster. Didn't work.
That sounds like a you problem.
I tried.
All right, here, let's get going because I want to eat.
I ran a mile every day for 4 years of high school, and I was falling. I just fell over every time. I didn't get faster.
Yeah. Well, I bet you could run further now that you've been biking so much. Or run faster.
Probably not. I don't think so. No matter how much I ran, I fell. If running a mile every day, 5 days a week for 4 years, at least not every,
I think you weren't pushing hard enough is the problem.
I was trying very hard. I guess I just fell over every time.
Because you were able to bike further and faster when you just did it a lot. So
I don't try hard biking. I just do.
True, we did talk about that thing where you can't get better at biking, but you can get better at running. So
no, that's not. You can't get better at biking. It's you're not more.
You can't get more efficient at biking once you have the basics down.
It's not getting better.
Well, but getting better is just making cardio better and making your leg muscles better and your other muscles better. All right.
You just won't get more.
You're not going to get more watts over time.
You can get more watts. You just can't get more watts per calorie.
True, but you can also increase your watts over time by doing almost any other exercise as well. You don't have to just bike the whole time to do that.
The point is, no amount of running made me able to run any faster.
Yeah, weird. One thing I'm going to do post-COVID is I'm going to start tracking my real mile time. I want to use that track in Astoria because I don't trust Strava for like such a short run where I actually want a very
accuracy of whoever measured that track.
Yeah, tracks are very standardized.
Yeah, they did just redo it, but you think they, for a track where there's no competitions, you think they put a lot of effort in it.
You realize the worst, like a track that's way off to run a mile on it, it's only 4 laps. You're looking at like less than 1% error on that time compared to a GPS, which has a much higher average error, especially over a very short distance.
That's true. I guess, is there any other way to measure?
Or I could measure out a mile and then run straight exactly 1 mile. The thing is, the reason I need to use the track, to get a real mile time, I need to run a mile somewhere where there is a completely uniform surface with nothing in my way and no possibility of like traffic or anything making me stop. Not a lot of places like that.
Where is there a measured distance?
Every track.
Yeah, but I'm just,
Every lap is a quarter mile. It's like, that's really,
supposed to be.
I mean, how much error do you think there's going to be?
You got to stay on the inside. What if you go on the outside of the track?
I
instead of
mean,
the inside?
I'll run on the appropriate part of the track.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. You have to, Emily, like, we'll take turns and have a stopwatch.
Outside lanes, inside lanes. I always thought it was interesting, like when you watch track meets, they start horizontally, right? And then they all come to the inside because that's shorter.
Well, it depends on what kind of race. Usually you have to stay in your lane and the starts are staggered.
You stay in your lane at the straight part. You don't have to stay in your lane.
Yeah, you do. In most racing, you have to stay in your lane the whole time. And the starts are staggered.
Well, then shouldn't the end also be staggered?
If you stagger the starts, you don't have to stagger the ends. You just got to stagger somewhere. It's a very simple calculation to figure that out.
I guess so.
All right.
Some lanes gotta be easier. The outside lane, if you're going the same distance, wouldn't the outside lane then be easier, less turning?
Theoretically, that could be true. Slightly less turning. However, the turn radiuses are so low that it's, in all practical purposes, not a problem. All right. It's Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about pets. So, the Rangers, according to, I typed Rangers odds of playoffs into Google.
Really low.
Because after the game, they had
won 4 in a row. The Bruins also won 4 in a row, so we didn't catch up to them. And
yeah, we need the Bruins to lose some games that we're going to.
Islanders fell back, but then they just beat the shit out of us to create a bigger gap. So now, and the Bruins won again. So it's like not only the gap got bigger,
yep,
and we haven't caught up to anybody.
Even worse, I looked at the schedule because some teams got better or worse at different parts of the season, but the Bruins actually have a pretty easy schedule for the rest of the year, the way things are going right now, which doesn't...
the grab is the most important thing. The games remaining against Buffalo.
Yeah.
The grab is the stat that matters.
Of course, we notably lost to Buffalo earlier, so...
One time, yeah, that was,
Yeah, so if that doesn't happen again, because that could be a problem.
It was OT loss. Yeah.
It was an OT loss, so we got that point. But I did check, because the odds were a lot higher before the game we just lost. And then they dropped on the TV. They said they have a 7.5% chance of winning based on some bookie, so of making it into the playoffs. So according to Google, as of right now, based on games that happened in the intervening period from the last time we checked that, their odds have risen to a sparkling 8.1% chance.
Yeah. Okay.
So either roll a natural 20. Or roll a 19 and then get lucky. Like, that's the odds of the Rangers making the playoffs.
Not good odds.
Not great odds.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll just, we weren't expected to make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, you know what we'll do? There won't be hockey and it'll be warmer, and then we'll finish reading the tale of Genji instead of watching hockey.
Sure.
I did turn off that game the other night. There were 4 minutes to go, and I was just like, fart noise. And you know what I did instead? I played Kid Icarus on the NES.
Okay, have fun with that.
I'm fighting, actually, I made it pretty far. I'm way better at that game than I was as a kid. But I'm currently fighting the unfortunately named boss, so I won't say the name of the boss on the show.
I've only ever, like, playing honestly without passwords or anything, I've only ever gotten past, like, the first vertical level.
I've gotten to the end of the first dungeon and beaten it legit on a real NES as a kid, but I really couldn't get beyond that without codes. I am using save states now, but I'm not doing any other cheating. Like, I'm just figuring the game out and playing on my own.
You're already I'm doing the biggest possible cheating, but no other cheating.
Yeah. It means it's the best, most perfect realization of me is what is playing this game.
Yeah, I've got a motor in my bicycle that's hidden, but no other cheating. That's the only cheating I'm doing.
Thing is, what I will say, playing Kid Icarus without that is an exercise in misery. Fuck that game. Playing it just with save states is actually way better and more fun than I expected, because I hated that game so much. I never tried this before on an emulator to actually like try to beat Kid Icarus. So anyway, in some news, and this is actually moderately big news that I wish the US would emulate, France this month has voted to ban any flights where there is a train that could do the same route that is active and available to the public within a certain amount of time. Just straight up. So right now, currently, it's going to ban 5 routes, which might not sound like a lot, but to analogize this for you USians, despite the fact that there's like a 2-ish hour Amtrak to Boston or DC from New York City, like it's a real short Amtrak, a terrifying number of flights go between New York City, Boston, and DC on a daily basis.
I mean, it's like, the train is a little bit slower than the plane, but
No TSA? Don't have to spend that hour it takes to get to the airport.
right, exactly. The train has some advantages, and it sort of evens out for those trips a little bit.
But also that evens out for those trips in America where Amtrak sucks. In France, the trains are pretty good.
Yeah, if that was a bullet train that went from New York to Boston, the plane would make no sense whatsoever.
So the worst part is
carry less people in less time.
it actually kind of is a bullet train. One thing people always forget, I think we've talked about this on GeekNights before, the Acela, like the fast train everyone makes fun of in America, the Amtrak, because it's so slow. That train is actually a bullet train and can go very, very fast. However,
technically, it's like, yeah, sure, some semantic meaning of
and it does go that fast for short segments. The sole reason, though, that route in America is so slow is because they have to redo all the tracks that have really tight turns.
Right. But
they can't redo those tracks without like destroying towns.
It does. When I say bullet train, I mean the real bullet trains, not in the semantic, no true Scotsman sense, but in the sense that on the other side of the world, there are trains that go 400, 500 kilometers an hour, and the Acela isn't even close. Right? If you put the Acela next to that in a race, it would look like a snail.
They also serve different purposes. Those super fast trains actually cover much longer distances, and
the Shinkansen in Japan's what? Like,
those aren't the fastest anymore. A lot of the fastest ones are part of the.
They are not the fastest, but they are still several times faster than the Acela. And Japan as a country is about the size of California-ish.
Yeah.
Right. So you could think of it as making a trip from like LA to San Diego, which isn't too different from I'd say a Boston New York trip, right?
Now, the point is simply this. Those trains, that trip would be shockingly short, even with our existing technology. The sole barrier to that is the tracks themselves that NIMBYs won't allow anyone to upgrade, and no government entity is willing to fund. But even now, with the current shitty Acela, I still think the U.S. should ban flights between New York and Boston.
Oh, yeah, I'm 100% agreement.
So in Paris, like, this is a big step. Paris to Bordeaux, to Lyon, to Nantes, to Rennes, and to Marseille are just banned. And it seems like the evidence is this will have a world-impacting decrease in carbon dioxide emissions. Like, it is it's not like enough to change our trajectory, but it's like a measurable, noticeable amount of reduction by not having those flights. And actually, the rule is pretty good too. The rule is if there's a train route that is 2.5 hours or less, that is the trigger that will ban flights.
So the Acela time from New York to Boston is about 3 hours and change.
Yep. The last I read, if they fixed the tracks, it would be a little under 2 hours.
So it would be like 7. It takes you, if you leave at 7 p.m. today, you'll get there at 10:48 p.m. Right? If the Shinkansen can go 320 running at speeds, it actually runs at speeds of 320 kilometers an hour.
Yep.
And it from New York to Boston is 346 kilometers. It would probably get there in an hour and change.
Yep.
So even the Acela with fixed tracks, right, is
well, the Acela with fixed tracks actually
almost an hour slower.
Well, actually, the Acela could go,
which is not fastest train on Earth. So if you had the fastest train on Earth, you'd probably be at least an hour.
I'm pretty sure the fastest trains on Earth are those new Chinese bullet trains.
Under ideal conditions, right?
Yeah, it looks like the Acela could go on those routes something like 220, 230 kilometers an hour with relatively minor improvements to the tracks that they can't even do.
Point is, it's still a laughably, not as...
Well, yeah, because America, until now, until Biden, didn't actually want to invest in trains at all in the last century.
Anyway.
Yep, operating speed 240 kilometers an hour is a baseline operating speed. Looks like they picked that number because that's the number that was reasonable to expect all the tracks to be upgraded to in the U.S. Couldn't even hit that. Mm-hmm. But I encourage this. I hope the U.S. does something similar someday, and I hope we do whatever we need to do to at least connect the Northeast Corridor via Amtrak. So you got any news?
There definitely should just be, the original point, right? Is that if there are several options to achieve the same thing, and one of them is just measurably more damaging,
yep.
You should absolutely just make that decision for people. Right?
Like having a bus or a train, like those two options, makes sense because they're comparable. Like there's slightly different use cases. One could be the budget option. There's a lot of stuff going on. But planes for that kind of route is just objectively more harmful and benefits almost no one.
The same thing as like plastic bag at the grocery store, right? The paper bag is just better.
Yep.
Right.
Don't put the moral hazard on the
bag
consumer.
away.
That's the lesson. Never put the moral hazard choice on the consumer. Because that's not fair. We all live in a society. So you got any news?
Do I have any news?
Katie Coop?
No, that's not a news. That's my thing of the day for next Wednesday.
Oh, for next Wednesday. Okay, I got some more news then.
It's not even Wednesday.
I just figured you wanted to talk about it. I did.
No,
yeah, because you sent me a link to it, and then you sent me another link that was like, and this is my thing of the day.
I said, what did I say? Wait, I'll use that on a Wednesday. Thing of today for today, something else.
Nah, I didn't notice that part.
Wait, I'll use that on a Wednesday. Yeah.
All right, there we go. So I got some news. This is actually a big deal. So New York City, I'll summarize this because you can go read Wikipedia if you care about all the details. There basically are two gigantic tunnels that get all the water New York City needs into the city. And they are so old and so necessary that I want to say since 1917 and 1936 for those two tunnels, neither one has been inspected at any point because there's no way to inspect them.
You got to turn the water off.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you go into the tunnel, you drown.
Yep. So tunnel number one.
Water's in there, moving how fast, right? Instant death if you go in there.
And you might think, well, turn one off, leave the other one on. Turning one off would cause water. Turning one off would literally start killing New Yorkers. Like
there's not enough water. You can't have one. Oh, I got a shit.
So tunnels number 1 and 2, thankfully, just seem to still be trucking, but we have no idea how they're doing. So the city has been trying for a little over 50 years to build tunnel number 3. This is like
Keep in mind, these tunnels, right, are just to give you a perspective, right? So the water comes from upstate New York, right?
Like Croton, Harmon type places.
Right. There are many reservoirs, and we have the Catskill Aqueduct is like the biggest, longest. Is it like the longest man-made tunnel or something? I don't know. It's this humongous aqueduct, right? That gets the water to the city, right? That system. Once it's in the city, there's like this place that, I've seen a picture one time of like where the water comes from the aqueduct and enters the New York water system. And that's where these other tunnels come into play, the tunnel 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Right? If the tunnel 1 and 2 isn't like, up in New York, somewhere north, right? That's the Catskill Aqueduct and other things that feed in or whatever.
Yeah. The system that gets water to New York is both very complicated, but also surprisingly simple in terms of how it operates. It's
complicated and simple, hard and easy, cheap and expensive.
That's how I would describe most major infrastructure. Like the principles involved are fairly simple. Like a lot of these things are designed so that they're slightly downhill for like miles and miles and miles and miles and miles to the point that you don't need pumps. Water will just go. But to design that system to actually get the water from all the places and get it to the right place in the right quantities, figuring out that exact angle and figuring out exactly how to put it all together and how to deal with exceptions, that is very complicated.
Also, the further away you get from the start of the tunnel, the deeper you got to dig.
Yep. The tunnel number 3, I think it's going to be 600 feet underground.
That's far.
That is very far, especially because this area is a lot of like bedrock kind of ground. It's all rock.
It's way lower than subways, like not even close. It's like it's way down there.
So work has begun on the final phase of tunnel number 3. Tunnel number 3 actually is, as far as I've read, it started supplying water to Manhattan, but it is not linked to the rest of the New York City system yet. And the final segment is in Long Island City. That's the last part they have to dig.
Yeah, so what's interesting about these tunnels, right, is that, you have to be able to access them somehow. So there's these shafts, right? It's like at various spots along the tunnel, right? There's
Wait,
a vertical.
Jeopardy question or Jeopardy answer. What are places Rim really would like to break into if he wouldn't be arrested?
along the tunnel, right? At various spots, every so often, there is some vertical hole, like a straight down hole that where you could go from the surface of the earth, open it up, and go downstairs, elevator. I don't know what they got in there, and go down to where the tunnel is. Obviously, they're all fucking locked because.
Yep. In fact, the city has actually started. There were a lot more photos and press access to the sites where they were building tunnel number 3. They have actually started scrubbing all those images off the internet wherever they find them and they have control over them. They've banned press access. They've shut down archives. There's a lot of secrecy now around the exact details of where tunnel number 3 is.
Well, I mean, for security reasons and also for,
to keep me out, of course.
Yeah, people who are going there and die.
Yeah.
It's a super dangerous place to work. The people working there are risking their lives just to dig the thing, right? So they don't want anyone unnecessarily. You would never be found. If you went in there and died, you would never be found. I bet there's probably mafia bodies in the tunnel. Right? So.
But like these stories are always fascinating because any piece of information you learn, even reading this article I'm going to link to, you'll notice something, and if you wonder about that, you could go down a rabbit hole that would consume the rest of your night. Like, for example, tunnel number 3 first began delivering water to Manhattan in 1998 and 2013. Mm-hmm. Why the and is there? I'm not sure, but that links to another article that there's a whole bunch of nonsense going on.
The point is that once Tunnel 3 is done and fully operational,
then they're going to shut down temporarily Tunnel number 1, which has not been seen by humans in over 100 years.
There will be enough capacity to turn the water off in the other tunnels, at least enough to go in there.
Yep.
And hopefully not die when going in there, and clean it, fix it, etc., which will probably take many, many years. And then
now there is a danger because apparently New York City, partly due to climate change, has started to hit already. It's bumping up against the maximum throughput of tunnels 1 and 2 combined. So we got to do the maintenance on 1 and 2 before we get to the point where we now can't turn off any of them again, which is probably coming. The last interesting thing is, so work began on the last 2 shafts. It's like a 14-mile one and I think an 11-mile one. The final end of this looks like it's going to be in 2026. And then they have to build even more tunnels to connect it to even more parts of the city that are not as important. I think in 2026 is when they can plan shutting down tunnel number 1 temporarily.
Yeah, SimCity 2000, when they added the water system, really you could just drag pipes and just like dig instantly.
Yep.
It's like while the game is paused, they really did not accurately simulate.
Yeah. You know what this feels more like? You haven't played Hearts of Iron with us yet when we did some live games, but it's like, all right, I want to make a new ship. I want another destroyer in my fleet. And you click a bunch of buttons, and then you look at the game, and the game says like, yeah, it's October 4th, 1937. That next destroyer will be done in 1941, and that's as fast as it's going to be there. And 4 hours later, you'll get a notification like, hey, that one ship you asked for is done. In some other news, this is interesting because we talked about this on Geek Nights, and I think we even linked to the documentary, of course. But as you know, the character Apu on The Simpsons is problematic for a bunch of reasons. And there's been a lot of conversation around that. We're not qualified to talk about that.
Wasn't there a whole documentary about
There was, and it was a fantastic documentary. And one of the points in it was that Hank Azaria in the documentary, basically seemed to disagree, didn't want to engage, was defensive, and the documentary kind of focused on that, rightly. The news, which just happened, this looks like it's breaking as of 7 a.m. today, or at least very recently, in the last few days. Hank Azaria actually turned around and issued not a press release saying I apologize, but he was doing some interview thing And he talked about this topic and how the documentary actually forced him to see things. He changed his, like, he realized he's wrong. He like openly, and it appears very earnestly, apologized. And I'm not gonna, like, this does not excuse anything that happened in the past. That is not even not something we could even like discuss because we're two white dudes doing a podcast.
I mean, it's not, how can I can't, accept someone's apology because I'm not the harmed person.
Yep.
Right?
But I think this article is worth reading because it is also from the perspective of an Indian American talking about like this apology, and it links to the apology. And it's something I honestly didn't expect to happen. I expected that documentary, like we all watched it, and that Hank Azaria would just never say anything about this again, and everyone would just try to avoid being in any way tied to that controversy. And instead, kind of out of nowhere, he like apologized, and there was at least a step forward in that conversation.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't know, he's the voice actor. He voices like half the characters on the show.
Yep.
He's also a real actor. He's been in a lot of movies.
Real actor? But yeah, I know what you mean.
Voice actors are real actors, right? But they're like people. I think people don't realize, like, you'll be watching a movie like I think he was in Heat, right? I never think he's ever been like the main character. He might have been in certain things I don't know about, but it's like you'll see him he'll be in a movie and you won't realize it's like, that's fucking Chief Wiggum. It's just because he's not using that voice. He's using whatever voice is appropriate for the movie he's in, which is not, it's not like, the Bender Jake guy who sounds the same. What's his name?
Why do I always forget that dude's name?
If you told me the name, I'd be like, if you said the name first, I'd be like, oh, I know who that is.
But I literally forget this dude's name. Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, exactly. Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, I know what he looks like. I've seen it literally every time. I just forget that dude's name. But
anyway, it's not like Joe, when he's voicing a character, like you can tell it's him, right? But Azaria, like you can't. He does a different voice every time.
Yep. It's interesting how over time that voice became in my brain the voice of Jake. And like if I ever watch Futurama, it's just like, oh, that's Jake's voice, and it feels weird. Instead of looking at Jake and saying, oh, that's Bender's voice, that feels weird. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was surprised that there was a further note in this story. Like I didn't think anything would ever come of this story again, at least from the white dude. So read this and form your own opinion. I'm not gonna really comment on that further. So do you have any news?
I don't know.
I don't think you sent me any news.
There's nothing really happening. What's happening?
Well, I mean, there's a lot happening. It's just stuff that we're not qualified to comment on or really don't want to center our voices on. Here, I'll go to FARC. What's going on FARC right now? Let's see. Something about the yellow pages. Oh, these headlines are all hard to parse.
Nope. I'm at Google News. Nope. Those are on Monday Newses. Nope.
Tech company Razer announces plastic-free single-use bamboo toilet paper, which raises more questions than it answers.
Yes.
An RV exploded somewhere. All right, that's sad. I got a bunch of phone calls today from an alarm company telling me that a temperature sensor was continuing to get hotter and hotter at some middle school in New Jersey. They have not called back recently, so I'm assuming that school did not burn down and that they have realized they were calling the wrong number all day. Guess we can just get right into things of the day. So check this out. I'm going to link to a Twitter thread from a fantastic Twitter account, in Kunabula, which mostly talks about historic writing, historic texts, cuneiform tablets, that kind of thing, like Dead Sea Scroll stuff, like really good history.
Cuneiform, isn't it cuneiform?
Cuneiform is how I've heard most professors pronounce it. I may be wrong.
I don't know the answer. I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm good. But most professors pronounce it that way, in my experience, could also be wrong because, as you all may remember, if you've listened to GeekNights a long time, in my middle school and in my high school, multiple teachers pronounced the name Goethe as Goeth. And I was too stupid to realize they were wrong. I didn't have any...
so adamant about saying Heracles all the time.
I am adamant because that's something I care about and I'm weirdly mad about. I still don't know why I'm so mad about that. Anyway, so I'll link to the Twitter thread because the thing that is the thing of the day is amazing, but this Twitter thread does a really good job of framing a particular aspect of why this thing is so amazing. If you've never heard of it, this is the Tripitaka Koreana. If I describe this without explaining, like without just telling you what it is, it's basically possibly the most complete and error-free transmission and storage of about 2 gigabytes of data from in the course of human history. This is 2 gigabytes of data that has been maintained error-free since long before the year 1200. And the story behind how it was made and what it is just amazing. Basically, it is, if I had to summarize, it is a collection of the Buddhist scriptures carved into 81,258 wooden printing blocks. Those printing blocks are stored in a special building that was built in the 13th century with the idea it was designed to be a permanent archive of this information intended to last forever. And it does continue to exist. It's the same building. It's the same wood blocks. And the cool thing about it is the design was such that the wooden blocks are the authoritative source of truth. They spent like 13 years carving these blocks with the characters, not only so that they could then say, this is the official, unedited version of this text, where there couldn't be a disagreement about it or a way to forge one. It's intricately cataloged and stored in a way to where it's persisted to this day. But what they would do is take those blocks out and use those blocks to print books. And the books were what people had access to. The monks who run this site to this day, they just maintain the blocks themselves.
I can't believe this thing is basically like a wonder of the world that like I've never heard of it. Right?
It wasn't designated as a UNESCO heritage site until like 1995.
UNESCO is an interesting thing. I always think about UNESCO. It's like, it feels like every country in the world except the United States. Maybe like, do we not like, do we like not sign up with them or something? It's like, and every other country in the world, UNESCO like dictates like, this is a cultural heritage site. This is an important thing.
I mean, we do that too, but we're like,
are there any UNESCO cultural heritage sites in New York City?
I mean, what was that Eddie Izzard bit? What was that Eddie Izzard bit long ago where it was like, this mall was built in 1962.
Yeah, in the United States, like, we dictate our own things. We're like, this is a national monument, right? There's no international people like saying, this is an important thing. Even things in the United States, in our territory that are older than our very.
I mean, I don't know. I do not know how many UNESCO World Heritage sites there are in the U.S. So
I don't know. Yeah, I just know that like I just know that UNESCO is an organization and picking, and designating cultural heritage sites is one of their functions. That's what I know.
Yep. But think about this. Most of you have probably never heard of this. So yeah, in the year like 1000, they made this thing. In the year like 1200 something, it got burned down by the Mongols. And then the nation state of the place at the time decided, you know what? We're going to rebuild this thing. We're going to make it even better. And that data has made it further than a lot of data I have generated in the last 10 years.
Right. So it's in Korea. So think about all the shit that has happened in Korea, including obviously Korean War. Right?
Yep.
Between 1200 something and today.
Yep.
And nobody went there and messed it up, even though a lot of people wanted to take it.
Yep, there's a note on the Wikipedia that really sets this up. The production of the Tripitaka Koreana was an enormous national commitment of money and manpower, perhaps comparable to the U.S. mission to the moon in the 60s. And this Twitter thread really frames it like the transmission of data over the centuries. Like, libraries do this, but this Twitter thread makes a good point about how that is usually serendipitous. Like, the intention of a library, especially like in the United States, is not necessarily to preserve an unedited text.
Have access.
Yeah, it's to spread access.
Yeah.
But this was the kind of thing that you see in sci-fi. This was an archive that is intended to stand the test of time and last forever. And it's doing a pretty fucking good job of lasting forever.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a really high quality thing of the day. Not as good as my thing of the day. So
your thing of the day is real good. So.
Is it? Okay. So there are these things in the United States, and I imagine no other country, though I guess I could be wrong about that, but this feels like a very United States white people thing. And that is pig calling contests, which is, you go to the country fair and there's a microphone and you go to the microphone and you call a pig like, here, piggy, 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 come on, what noises would you make using just your body and a mic, and, in order to convince a pig to come to you and move in your general direction, right? And then I assume there's some sort of judging scoring system that I know nothing about, and a winner is chosen. Maybe they get a ribbon, maybe they get a prize, maybe some bacon. I don't know what your prize is for winning the pig calling contest. Money? I don't know. But obviously, they're really hilarious to watch. People making pig noises, people jumping up and down, people taking it seriously, people taking it not so seriously, etc.
I participated. I learned how to do pig calling as part of a 4-H thing with my Cub Scout pack when I was a little kid.
We did not do that. Okay, but
I got grew up in Michigan. What do you want?
In this video, somebody has taken video footage from some pig calling contests and edited it together on the right side of the screen. And on the left side of the screen is a person with an electric guitar. And effectively, they are playing the electric guitar with quite a bit of distortion along with the edited pig calling noises to create a somewhat good heavy metal song because
it's a bop.
How far away is pig calling from heavy metal vocalists? Not that far, right?
A little more squealing and a little less growling, but otherwise.
No, I'm just saying. Excellent mashup here.
In the meta moment, my reading of the Tale of Genji did not accelerate as expected because I thought I could sit outside and read and it got cold again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll accelerate soon. Give us another week or two. It's weirdly extra cold for some reason now, and hopefully it will be warm again soon. GeekNights has...
They gave us the super cold winter with all the snow, and I was inside and had to go outside. And now it's like, okay, we're almost ready to go outside. Still cold.
Yep, like it was so warm. I went for a bike ride. I'm home.
The upside of the climate change is that it's global warming. It's like if you're going to kill us all and rise the sea level, at least... in the meantime, if that's somehow unavoidable, because obviously I would like to avoid that, but if it's unavoidable, at least make it 90 degrees every day while I'm down. Right?
Well, we've talked about how New York City is a humid subtropical climate and has been for about 5 years.
Why is it fucking 40 degrees?
Because it's spring.
At the end of April.
At least in the old days, we wouldn't have that couple weeks of it being weirdly warm before we had the cold snap again. It would just be cold and still be cold right now. There weren't many years where I was outside running and it was 75 degrees and sunny on April 22nd in the past.
Just make it warm.
Well, it's getting there. Stay tuned. I think it'll be warm this weekend. Maybe I'll go bike up on that South County Trailway.
It's going to rain.
Only on Sunday, last I checked. I'm going to check right now. Let's see. 10-day forecast for Queens. No, Saturday, 69 degrees, no rain.
What's the low, you and your high?
The low is 53.
69 degrees for 2 seconds.
Now the low is 53, and that's mostly at night. It's going to be mostly warm all day, it looks like.
This one says it's going to be 52 at 8 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm not going to be up biking then. I'll be biking at 10.
You can't get very far if you're not up at 8 in the morning.
I got a lot more daylight now than I used to have at the end of the season last year.
Sunset 7:46.
Yeah, that's fine. I can bike in the dark. I got lights.
Sunrise 6 a.m. Good. There you go. You got to get going.
I only get up that early if I'm hiking, mountain climbing, or skiing or something. I'm not getting up that early for a bike ride.
It's a good strategy, actually, to get up that early for the bike ride, because by the time you have escaped the car area, there's no traffic at 6 a.m. really.
True. If I do that, because usually I go to the west side because I like that route, and I go up to Cortlandt Park to get to the trailway. But it is much faster and more direct to just go over Randall's Island and through the Bronx.
That's the way I go.
But those routes have a lot of cars and a lot of people parked in the bike lanes.
Not really.
I've run into a lot of... In fact, I have a video of all the cars blocking the bike lanes.
It's not a bad way.
I get a time lapse almost every time I do that ride. Anyway, so that's the meta moment. Can find our stuff. We're not doing any cons anytime soon. There won't be any cons anytime soon. Don't go to cons that happen anytime soon, obviously.
If you live in New Zealand, you can go to a con.
Oh, yeah. If you live in New Zealand, you can go to a con.
Or
PAX
you know,
Aus
maybe
looks.
some other
PAX
there
Aus
might be
is
some
going to
other
happen,
countries.
but that's toward the end of the year.
I don't know. I can't say if you should go to that or not.
Yeah, it looks like it's scheduled at least, and they're still talking about increasing the capacity. Australia's doing better than us. We can say that.
Okay, it's hard not to be.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get right into it. We didn't have a lot of Thursday shows queued up, so we're going to talk about pets, which is something that is very near and dear to me. I've had a lot more pets than Scott, at least, but I think
Yes, somehow in 15, 16 years of Geek Nights, we haven't done a topic so basic as pets, something that comes up just every day.
Didn't we just review The Simpsons?
Sure, you know, I'm just saying. I mean, we did talk about Simpsons in the past at some point, just not as the main bit directly as itself. You know, it was incorporated into some other shows, right? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like something so basic and fundamental to everyday life. We have not done a show on it. It's really hard to think of those things because they're hiding in plain sight. It's like, what should I do a show on? And you could almost imagine a Simpsons scene where someone's like, what should I something, and there's a giant something just running around.
Well, you know why? The process now, like we used to have different processes. We used to plan a lot more. For a Thursday episode is during COVID, we'll both be in our respective computer rooms and we'll have a Discord conversation of what should we do the show on. And usually this now involves both of us looking around the room and typing nouns that we see that we don't think we've ever talked about that class of noun before. Usually only to find out that
it's not likely to be a show.
Yep. But usually only to find out that, oh yeah, we actually did a show on that in 2006 and then we did it again in 2012. And here we are in 2021.
But yeah, somehow we've never done a single pet show ever.
So at least
so easy. If you think of other ideas along these lines, something that is so simple.
And is not, especially things that are not science, technology, gaming, anime, animation, comics, manga, something that is not one of those things.
Yeah, tell us because we need Thursday ideas.
Yep. So what's interesting is in my life, partly like my family, my entire family pretty much is very like animal centric, like we just always were. Even my extended family for the most part, like not just like my direct family. So I basically lived surrounded by pets, ranging from standard cats and dogs to exotics to straight up like deer and raccoons at times. So I've interacted with a lot of animals, and it was actually a weird, not a homesickness, because I was jazzed to be in college, but there was a very weird time in my life when I was between RIT and the Living in Beacon where I didn't have a pet, and that like gap was very like prominent in my just feelings. And when we moved to New York City, I have a pet again. And I think that that one period where I didn't have pets will hopefully be one of the only periods in my life that is of any significant length of time where there are not pets in my home.
I'm not the exact opposite, like never had a pet, but I've not had many pet, right? It's like, when I was very, very young, like I can't even remember, so young, right? My parents had a cat that was named Sherlock, right? And my memory of this cat is not the cat itself. I couldn't even pick it out of a row of cats in a lineup, right? Though I guess it was orange maybe, but I think there's a photo of it somewhere. But when I was young, I remember the furniture my parents had in their bedroom had all these like lines on it, like all around the base of the furniture, all the furniture, right? And it wasn't until later that I realized, right, that basically that cat was an evil demon cat my parents were afraid was going to kill me when I was in baby form. That scratched the shit up of basically everything, and you could tell how high the cat could reach because all the furniture was scratched, like this horizontal. It looked like, like you go to the beach and you see the line where low tide is, right?
Nah, it's low cat tide.
Like.
It's low cat claw tide.
Exactly. So I think that, my parents, they had, a dog or, different pets in their lives, but we didn't get, the only pet I had when I was a kid was I had some fish, and then I didn't have fish. And then when I left to go to college, they got Dusty the dog. And then that's pretty much it in the Rubin family as pets go.
Dusty was a good dog. I enjoyed my times hanging out with Dusty. Though as he got older, Dusty would definitely bark at me a lot more than he used to.
Well, Dusty, I couldn't get him to bite you, but
Yep.
I did my best.
He'd bonk his head against me and then run away or go chase a paper towel.
And when Dusty, when Dusty was like a baby dog, he would like eat paper towel, yip a whole way too much. But then when he got older, he sat on the couch and watched TV like a Reuben. And then,
Yeah, the only like common pet we never had, like the really common pet, was probably cats. Not because no one liked cats. We just ended up, our family never had cats. Not even because anyone was allergic to them or anything. And I, at least when I was a kid, was not allergic to cats. I am now, as an adult, like frighteningly allergic to cats. Like to a degree that is like comical in an 80s movie. The character whose only beat is they are allergic to cats, allergic. But yeah, let's see. We had, so when I was born, my parents already had a bunch of dogs, like just bunch of dogs in the house. And I have a lot of very like kid memory of those dogs, like Mascot and Libby. They're Springer Spaniels. And then we rescued dogs. We got Brockett. Then we adopted different dogs. And we just had dogs in the house for my entire life. We had fish. The first pets that we, like me and my little brother, would like have to take care of, and they were our pets instead of just the family pets. Hamsters. We had Figgy. Hamsters don't live that long. So then we had Figgy the second. Then we had Figgy the third. Then we had a fourth one who we just called Figgy again. I want to say we had a fifth Figgy. We just, as kids, Figgy was such a good name for a hamster that we apparently adamantly refused to ever name a hamster anything but Figgy. That was just a thing.
Hamsters at once, just two Figgies.
No, only ever had one hamster at a time. Hamsters do not like to be around other hamsters for the most part.
How do they make more hamsters?
They're around them long enough to make more hamsters.
Okay, interesting.
We had gerbils at one point that we got from a nun.
I still don't know the difference between a gerbil and a hamster. Isn't it the same fucking thing?
They're completely different animals. They're not even remotely close to each other.
Okay.
A hamster, imagine like a tiny little bear. A gerbil, imagine like take a rat and a squirrel and mash them together and make them bitey. They're cute.
Okay.
Not super like human focused smart compared to a lot of other small animals like that. Honestly, I don't think gerbils make good pets for like most people. I think they should be treated more like an exotic pet. Hamsters are much easier for people to deal with, I think. Gerbils require special cages or you can literally drive them insane for reasons I don't really want to get into. But we got these gerbils from a nun.
I always found those interesting, the hamster and the gerbil, because I've never seen them out in the wild ever. Right?
Oh, I've seen wild. I've never seen a wild gerbil in person. I've seen wild hamsters in a zoo before. I've never encountered an actual wild hamster on my own in the wild.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm talking about like out in the wild. It's like, where did these animals come from? I'm sure I could look
all
it up,
different
but it's
places.
like, I've only ever seen them as pets in a cage in someone's house.
Do you know guinea pigs?
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen guinea pigs in the wild. Yeah.
Nah. But I think the like
I haven't personally seen them in the wild, but I've seen in the wild on video. Right.
At one point, we had a little mouse who was our pet. We rescued him from a tragic pet shop that the owner, when we were kids, because one thing my mom did, one of her jobs was basically rescuing animals from abusers and dangerous situations and like doing animal welfare stuff. And there was this one moment where a owner of a pet store basically just gave up and just left, just like abandoned a pet store full of animals to die.
Uh-oh.
So my mom was part of like that rescue effort, and we adopted a little mouse from that, among some other animals that we helped foster. I forget. I'm old enough to not be able to fully piece together chronologies from my youth, but I think that's the same time we got our second lovebird. I think Frisbee also came from that pet store, if I recall correctly. But I think that class of like small animal that is reasonably durable and doesn't require super specialized knowledge to take care of and only lives a couple of years is probably like, I think there's something good for children to be able to experience that, and also honestly to experience that loss and to learn about like the real world and death and everything along the way without also having the commitment of that chinchilla is going to live 20 more years. That's something I've noticed a lot of people who own chinchillas, I think specifically, don't actually know how long they live and assume that they live like a hamster or a gerbil or a squirrel or something, and then discover that they can live a lot longer and don't know what to do. That seems to happen with a lot of
It
birds.
outlives you. Uh-oh.
Yep. Dusty, we got Dusty when I was very young. My mom still has Dusty. Dusty will probably outlive both my parents the way parents tend to go.
Dusty the bird outlived Dusty the dog. So.
Yeah. Dusty the bird still remembers me to this day, despite the fact that I don't see Dusty very often. It's really funny and cute.
I mean,
But-
why wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, not every animal would necessarily remember that kind of thing. Like different animals have different relationships with humans. But one thing it's interesting how in America, there's certain pets that society just treats as standard, and people have a lot of basic knowledge. Like a lot of people get dogs and cats and hamsters, and they don't know anything about those animals at all. Like parents get them for their kid. Like, oh, kids should have a pet. I'll go to the Petco and get a pet. Or in the old days, before a lot of places started banning this, go to like one of those dodgy pet stores, like literally in a mall to get like a dog.
Yep. There was a pet store in the mall near where we lived for quite a while, right? But it's like, yeah, I think people just don't think too hard about it. They're like, buy a dog, right? You got to buy dog food, obviously, give it water.
And you're in the pet store, you see like, oh, that is dog food.
What else you got to do?
Yeah.
What else you got to do? Take it to the vet one time, and then you're good to go.
Yep. And the problem is, even those animals do require, like a lot of people have problems, especially with a lot of dogs and cats, where the problem is they don't actually know shit about dogs and cats, and they do the wrong thing, feed the wrong food, train the wrong way, and cause interesting social or physical disorders in the animals that end up, like a lot of problematic behavior of pets usually comes from owners not actually knowing about those animals.
Yeah, a lot of times people, and you'll hear people say like, "Oh, my," like they'll say, like they'll act like it's just the nature of their animal, like,
Yep.
My
dog barks all the time. Like, yeah, is your dog bored?
My dog is not very social. It's like he doesn't go well with other dogs.
Have you ever introduced him to another dog in a controlled
how
setting?
did your dog get that way?
Yeah. Yep. But at least with those animals, so many people have them, and so much like really basic knowledge is in popular culture that a lot of people do well enough so those animals don't particularly suffer, even if they're not necessarily raised particularly well. Like they might eat bad food and have like some minor health problems, but they tend to do okay.
Also, there's enough infrastructure around those animals.
Right? You fuck up, your dog or cat is sick.
Store, there's dog food and there's cat food at the grocery store, right? If you go to a vet, even in the middle of nowhere, they know what to do with a cat or a dog.
Yep.
Right? It's common, right? If you show up with your, monkey to the vet and, just a standard vet in a suburb, they're going to be like, I don't know what to do with monkey.
Yep. The classification there, you'll notice that normal vets will usually only be able to handle dogs, cats, and a small number of other common animals. And most other animals you might have as a pet are technically classified as exotics. Many vets will not treat them at all. Some vets will treat them, but they'll warn you like, yeah, I'm going to do the best I can. Like, I'm not an expert here. But like for even rabbits, like we'd have to take the rabbit to a specialized vet that can handle exotics.
And then there's the other kind of animal, like, gerbil hamster, where it's like, do you really take it to the vet? It's sort of like,
I think you should. I think generally it's sort of an aside, but
goldfish don't go to the vet, right? It's a goldfish.
Well, sadly, most goldfish can live a long time and have a very different profile from what most people think, because most people drastically, terribly mistreat goldfish.
Right. So the fish I had, right? So I wasn't even like planning to get fish, but we were at like the Perm Festival, right? And they had the old throw the ping pong ball in and get a goldfish in a plastic bag. So I got a goldfish in a plastic bag, and then I put it in like a bowl of water, right? And then we went to there was a little aquarium store in the mall, right? And I was like, all right, what do I need for the goldfish? So you got a little bowl, right? And they're like, you got to put in distilled water. You can't be putting in your sink water. And I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then they were like, yeah, you also got to put this stuff in the water so the fish doesn't there's a disease called ick, right?
Yep. Ick is just a death sentence.
It's like, what disease could you what is the most disease name, right? It's like, we need a disease name. And he's got the ick. basically the fish will get white spots and die. I don't know what causes it or anything. I'm not a vet. All I know is that if you see
It's a little
a
little parasite, like a malaria kind of thing.
Oh, okay. If you see white spots on your goldfish, it's not good, right? And then it's like, here's some fish food. Shake it in the bowl once a day, you know? It's like, okay, so we got the bowl and I just followed the instructions. You know, I did what they told me to. And the fish lived and it got pretty big. It started as like the tiniest goldfish. And then it was like a couple inches long goldfish. And then one day my mom came home from wherever she was and the goldfish was not in the bowl. It was on the kitchen counter. So I guess he had a little jump. So my mom picked it up and put it back in the bowl and it came back to life. It wasn't dead.
Nah.
So we're like, well, I guess it doesn't fit in the bowl. So we put like a cutting board so it couldn't jump out of the bowl. And then we got a fish tank. So then we had this big old fish tank. And honestly, I was actually more interested in the bubbly treasure chest than the fish.
Yeah. I generally find that fish aren't the best. Like, fish teach different sets of lessons to kids. And I find a lot of kids seem to just get bored with fish after a certain point or a certain age, unless they get into those technical aspects.
Yeah, I was mostly, you know, like I had a friend who was like aquarium nerd, you know, like he was into aquariums, right? But I was just like, it looks cool. I like it, you know, bubbly treasure chest, awesome, you know. But I didn't actually, you know, it's like the fish is just it's a fish. It's cool. Watch it sometimes, you know.
Yep. I think
you're not making a relationship with the fish.
More interactive pets.
Cuddling with the fish.
I think, like, in general, like other kinds of pets are just very much, I think they can generally be a very positive influence on kids. Like, I know, like, the fact that we had pets my whole life really shaped who I am as a person today. Like that, I think I might have ended up being a very different person had we not had so many pets and animals. Because if you actually, I've noticed most people who have problems with their pets, another thing that they don't do is not just that they don't learn, like they don't have the book knowledge, but fine, sure. They also just don't actually pay attention to their pets. They don't actually like look at how a pet's behaving and think about like, why is that dog doing that? What's going on in their little brain? Like, try to understand and empathize and like deal with that. A lot of people just don't. And then they're surprised.
The people are living their own lives and letting the dog live their own life like it was a person, and then only paying attention to the dog when it's like, I feel like having some dog time. The same way you would feel like, I feel like reading that book on the shelf. And then when you're not reading it, it's on the shelf.
And I think that attitude is less than it used to be, but it was definitely exacerbated by the proliferation of shitty, like, puppy mill pet stores in malls and places like that. I'm glad we're moving toward banning that kind of pet store.
Yeah. Anyway, just to round out my fish story. So that fish was in that tank, right? Lucky the fish. And then we got we're like, well, we got this big old fish tank now, right? So we got a second goldfish, a fancy looking one.
Ooh.
And then we got a tiny little, I don't know if it was technically a catfish, but it looked like a catfish and it was really tiny. And because it was supposed to supposedly like, you know, eat a lot of the dirt towards the bottom of the tank, which it did. And
oh yeah, bottom feeder. That's you were getting towards starting to make like a mini ecosystem, which is how like a real aquarium has to be managed.
Yeah. But anyway, the point that all that happened was the fancy goldfish and the little catfish looking guy, they both died before the original fish died. The original fish lasted the longest, was eventually alone, right? All by himself. This goldfish that you got for free at the carnival for like a ping pong ball, right? That shouldn't have lived more than like a week. I imagine none of the other fish at that little carnival probably survived a week. Lasted many years. And then even though we kept doing every ick preventative measure, they got the ick, right? So, yeah, I guess the ick is unavoidable.
Yep. Well, it's one thing that a lot of people who get pets, especially when a family gets a pet for a kid, especially a longer lived pet, like not a hamster or something smaller, they tend to also, like, there's a certain amount of gross or grim animal husbandry knowledge that honestly people should know. Like when I was a kid, you could definitely tell the people who had read at least one book that talked about the serious, real stuff about dogs versus the people who had never done that and relied on their vets for anything. Like those are the people, like the latter were the people who like didn't know they had to clip their dog's nails. Like that kind of nonsense would happen. But also like, you gotta kind of learn.
Too many people like that. Everyone I know is like, fuck, I hate clipping the dog's nails.
Yeah. Oh God, you think clipping a dog's nails is a pain in the ass? Scott, clipping a rabbit's nails, most rabbits do not fucking want you to clip their nails. And they can kick.
Don't say.
They can kick way harder than you would expect for a tiny little guy.
You're huge. They're tiny. Just hold them down.
Yeah, but they're also fragile. You can't hold them down too hard. You got to be it's a delicate dance. Dog, you can just like wrestle them down and clip the nail.
Tranquilizer. What's that thing people always post on the internet about cats? Like
the bunny burrito, the cat burrito.
Smart, use drugs.
I like the burrito method of you wrap the small animal in basically a blanket and then pull the little leggy out, and that's how you do it.
Well, there's also that thing where like you grab a cat in a certain way and then they just don't move.
Get them by the scruff.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, basically that kind of knowledge, like it should be more normalized learning that stuff, even though some of it is gross and terrifying. It's kind of your responsibility if you're going to have a pet to know at least like more about the pet. Same as if, like, not to compare it to a car, which is a very different thing. The car doesn't have feelings, but if you're going to have a car, you should at least know the bare minimum about how that thing works, or else it's going to run down and break way earlier than you'd expect, or you're going to go to a mechanic way too late and owe a lot of money and not understand what you're paying for. There's a lot of tragic situations where people take a pet to the vet way too late, and what would have been a $50 thing is now a $3,000 thing, or a very sad conversation with the family.
The fact that you said the word animal husbandry made me think of a nerdy thing, which is in Civilization 6, the first three technologies that you research in Civilization 6, like the first three available ones. So the most basic ones are animal husbandry, mining, and pottery, right? And even me, it's like, do I know pottery? Not really.
No.
It's like, do I know mining? Not really. Do I know animal husbandry? Not really. It's like, those are the three basic ones.
Yeah.
I don't think Civ 6 should be like the defining, the Civ 6 text tree should define, how we should behave as a society. But the fact that most people, self-included, don't know all that much about those three basic things.
I remember when I did my thing of the day a while ago about a tackle block, like the practical use of pulleys, like that knowledge does not exist in a lot of people's heads because they don't have to do it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like writing might be the earliest one I actually know.
Yeah, our rabbits, we only have one rabbit, little Moogie now, but Theo, his thing was he hated his nails getting clipped and he was mad about it. But he didn't when we clipped his nails, it wasn't like he'd bite us while we're clipping them, like panicking or anything. Like we'd get him clipped. He would, after the nail clipping was done, like make a face and like with malice aforethought, bite us or bite a nearby thing on purpose as an act of anger and or revenge. Like it was so clearly intentional and so clearly in response to what we had done, as opposed to, oh no, I'm freaking out and I bit you, but more like, fuck you, mom and dad, bite.
What do bunnies do out in the wild if there's no one clipping their nail?
They only live 2 years out in the wild at best, so they don't need it. Also, they wear them down by digging and scraping and stuff.
Why don't you let him have some digging and scraping, then you maybe can clip less often.
Yeah, but it's still not enough. Like clip, you're still gonna have to clip at some point. At least check on him.
Give him a dig and scraping rock, so it really wears him down.
Actually, you can, and that reduces how often you gotta clip him. But that's something people underestimate too. Like, how long do you think a squirrel lives?
I mean, judging by the fact that there was one black squirrel in the park nearby, and I saw it for at least, 4 or 5 years in a row, it's got to be at least that much, probably.
Yeah,
more.
they can live, like, especially if they don't get sick or eaten by something.
I don't think there were 2 black squirrels in the same tree in the same park in consecutive years, and it was a different one.
It's a good observation. They can live like 14 to 20 years if they're well cared for. Like rabbits too, like in the wild, they make it like a year, maybe 2, just because it's so dangerous to be a rabbit. In a house, they can live more than 10 years just fine. Kind of like humans. Put a human naked out in the woods and got to survive on your own your whole life. Not that likely you're going to make it past like 30 something probably.
Well, not a domesticated human. Is that rabbit that lives 2 years in the wild like dying on its own, or is it because it got eaten?
Usually
it's
got
eaten by anything.
Yeah, it's either got eaten
or go for,
or not eaten, but also like malnutrition, or just like they are more susceptible to illnesses when they get older, just like humans are. Like if I ate some rotting meat when I was 15, I could probably survive that. If I ate a bunch of rotting meat today, I might not look so good compared to how I would have handled that when I was 17. Eat some rotting meat when you're in your 60s, like, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if the building we're in now. Actually, you can bring a pet here. They actually only charge. They don't. A lot of buildings in the city, they want to make you have a pet fee where you pay all the time. This building just has pet deposit. Where you pay one time, and they just hold that money.
I like that.
And
that's
pet doesn't.
That's fairly fair. I'm a big.
The building's full of pets. There's this dog, and as long as your pet doesn't make trouble, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. Our building pets are.
There's also a size limit, I guess. I don't know what it is though.
Pets are technically not allowed in our building, but there are a lot of pets in our building because the super literally doesn't care at all. But we're looking around. There's some pet-friendly buildings in the area, and rents are way down in this neighborhood, like right now.
For a short time.
Yeah, I gotta sign a long-term lease.
Yeah, better leave now. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, what do we, Amanda had like corgis. I guess her parents just keep getting more for some reason.
Yeah.
Because they're losing it.
I mean, almost everyone in my family just keep getting pets because I don't know, pets are really...
Like, should I get one? It's like, on the one hand, maybe yes, but on the other hand, it's like...
I think if you two had a pet, it would be a very enriching experience. Because
still a pain in the ass. The problem is, it's like a pain in the ass.
It is.
Someone's got to watch the pet.
I mean, think of it this way, though. Like, if you had a kid, that's a lot more responsibility and a lot more pain in the ass.
Forget that nonsense.
But think about a pet as like, you get some of those kinds of benefits and some of that pain in the ass, but it's way less pain in the ass.
One person works at night, it's like, oh great, so I got to do all the pet taking care of biz,
Well, we just split it up.
Not a problem.
Yeah, like
well, imagine if you were only awake at like night.
Well, you could get a pet that is crepuscular and is awake both times.
Well, but you can't take it to the vet at night, or
Yeah, you shouldn't have to take it to the vet that often, unless there's a problem.
I'm just saying, is that the responsibilities of you get a dog, right? You're not walking it, 1 in the morning, right?
Well, that's if we got a dog, because we both work.
Several dog walks, the other person's doing not so many.
Yeah, like because we both work, and it's not like eventually COVID will be a post-COVID time where we're out of the house all the time. Like, I would probably literally drop a dog off at doggy daycare all day, every day while we were at work, instead of leaving them home alone.
Like, doggy daycare is nice. I actually saw a photo today of the world's, I assume the world's best dog walker. There's like this semi-famous dog walker in the city. They walk like a huge pile of dogs at once. It's sort of amazing. But they're very picky. They're like, they won't walk the dog unless it's like the best dog. So it's like, this person's walking around with like the 10 or 11 best dogs that meet their approval all at once.
But rabbits,
more than probably, right?
Like, not just because I really like rabbits, like, because every type of animal, like whatever kind of pet you're gonna get, you just have to learn about that kind of animal. Like, I had to learn a lot about rabbits about a decade ago when we got 2 little bunnies, because I didn't know a lot about rabbits. But rabbits are very specifically good as New York pets, just because they're silent, they don't really cause a bunch of damage. They're litter trainable. Like, you can just train them. They'll just go in a litter box just like a cat would. Their poop doesn't smell like anything at all. Like, the poop, like their pee smells a little in the litter box. Yeah, poop doesn't smell like anything.
Your apartment didn't smell like poop ever. It smelled like hay.
Yep. That hay is a fairly pleasant smell. It's like, it almost smells like matcha. Like, I like that. I like the smell of hay.
I'd rather not smell the hay, but it's not a bad smell like vomit.
Well, I mean, go to like my house when we were kids. The house smelled like dogs because we had dogs. Dog houses smell like dog houses.
Yeah, I would rather hay smell than dog smell, but I would still rather no smell than hay smell.
Yeah. But it's just, especially during COVID, just having a little guy like mooching around the house has been a very enriching, like, it honestly helped us just stay sane during this whole experience. I only worry that he's going to be mad if we start going to work again.
Maybe.
Because he's really used to, like, I'll be working and he'll just like wake up and come into the computer room and be like, hey, what's up?
I honestly wish that, they tried Robot Dog and it didn't really work out too well. But I think in our lifetime, we could have a robot dog that doesn't suck.
Yeah,
it's a possibility.
Look at how many people are emotionally attached to their Roombas. Like, seriously, I'm not even joking. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not even to say that, like, you might be thinking like, oh, you just want the robot dog because you're lazy. It's like, well, hold on a second. There are people who are lazy who don't want to have to take care of it as much. But there's also people who might need the companionship of a pet, but are incapable of taking care of it. Right?
That field of AI-driven companion is a big field of study, especially for people who are very old, who might be experiencing cognitive deficits and are
Very
homebound.
senior or disabled person can, be helped a great deal by like a nice doggo.
Yeah.
But they can't take care of the doggo. So suddenly now, if they want to have one, they got to have money to have someone else take care of the doggo. And it's like, it's a whole thing. But you know what solves that? Robot doggo.
Yep.
At least it has to be good enough, though, that it actually, serves the purpose.
But I think it's because having pets is also something that's it's not uniquely human. There are other animals that have done similar husbandry type things, but humans, like because we've killed time enough on this episode, it looks like. We co-evolved with dogs. Like we've made dogs over time, like they evolved with us, and we kind of made them more able to socialize with us in a really interesting, weird way, which is part of why I think dogs are the most common, most popular, like just out there pet. Cats are a decent number 2.
Yeah, we got horses too.
But what about the ethical concerns? What if you have an AI robot dog that can learn and eventually starts to get to the level of apparent intelligence of a small animal, a real one? Then what?
Good. It'll live forever. It'll be freaking awesome.
Yeah. But what can you throw it away now? Ethics start coming in.
It doesn't. If you throw, it'll be able to take care of itself.
All right, we killed enough time. We killed enough time. I'm going to go give my little rabbit in there some pellets and a couple craisins, and then I'm going to watch the Rangers. I don't know. I was about to say lose, but I don't know. I don't know how this game will go.
It's the Flyers. We'll probably.
I feel like we'll win, but you know what? I'll bet it'll be a moderate blowout, but not a crazy blowout. Like 4-1 is my guess.
We really did bad things to them.
I know, but I feel like they had to have studied those games. To like, what were we doing? But it might be like we are with Ovi. Like, well,
Right,
he went.
I can go watch the Counter-Strike World Championships 1,000 times.
Yep. Well, like everyone knows, Ovi, he's there. He goes to that spot. And then he scores a goal. Just don't let him go to that spot. And then he scores a goal from that spot. And the coach is like, what did I fucking say? But you want to watch the video again? Here it is. It's like Super Meat Boy. Here's 10,000 OVs overlaid. They all go to the same spot and score a goal.
Anyway.
All right. I think that was a fine episode.